though, I just wanted to talk. I think it's important we address the difference between residency and citizenship, because the programs that we've been discussing today are, a combination of both. We've seen the option in Cyprus that allows for citizenship by investment, and the United States and Portugal, it's initially a residency program. And I think that's a very important distinction that people understand when they're deciding what type of application do I want to make and to what jurisdiction should I make this application. Because once they understand that, then it'll definitely determine which countries actually offer citizenship and which ones only offer residency. So for some people, obviously, it's the benefit of citizenship is having that extra travel document very quickly, which allows them much greater mobility. Others maybe are quite happy with a residence card. So, we're seeing, that's where Portugal certainly has been extremely popular. And, with the United States, it's just getting status, having access to be able to live and work and relocate your family to the US. So, again, I think it's also very, as I mentioned, it's important that we understand that as we sort of get into the question and answer session as well. So let me just give you a quick background here about Latitude, my firm, and we work in several different areas. You'll see we focus on residence and citizenship. And as I mentioned in my initial remarks, we also represent the Investment Migration Council in the Caribbean, but also we work with a variety of different governments. So we help them either design a program from scratch and build it up into to an existing program that's ready to go to market, or we work with governments to help them adjust their existing program. And this is to make sure that they can react to things such as COVID. In fact, our government division, which I head, we've spoken to over a dozen countries in the last 6 months, with people looking to make some adjustments. So it is something that governments are looking at, and they see the value of using these programs to generate foreign direct investment. Okay, so as we mentioned, I said a second ago about determining residency versus citizenship. And so some of the main motivations of why people are looking at this, can be explained here. And once we get a better understanding, then we can recommend, say, one program over another. So the first one there, mobility, is, as I said, if you're coming from a country where the passport doesn't give you great visa-free travel privileges, then that's an easy solution. Is you get your second citizenship and you have access to Schengen, to the UK, to parts of Asia, to whichever countries may be important for you. Security, we're seeing this. Especially in the context of COVID. I've been doing a lot of work in the United States recently where Americans are just very nervous about a variety of things, and they're restricted in terms of their ability to travel because a lot of the restrictions that have been imposed on US travelers. So they're looking at having that second citizenship to allow them to enter different jurisdictions over and above their American passport. And that will apply to many different people who have been impacted by COVID and the inability to travel. Quality of life, for some people, this is certainly on the residency side. Many people are looking at places like Portugal, like Cyprus, places in the Caribbean, the US. It all boils down to what's important for me in terms of my lifestyle and where can I achieve that. For some people, it's education, or more particularly education for their kids. Business, for some people, it's easier for them to manage business, let's say in Europe, if they're actually a citizen of a European Union country. And so they would look at that as a motivation to do so. Some people, it's just retirement. I'll be talking about the Caribbean, and some people may say, hey, I want to go and buy a nice villa in the Cayman Islands and put my feet up, enjoy the sunshine and a slower pace of life. So that's a motivation for some people. And finally, tax planning. We're seeing this more and more as people are more mobile and have different touch points around the world. There may be options that can help them minimize their tax burden, especially now, again, as a consequence of COVID. We're expecting taxes in a lot of these developed countries are going to be going up, and so people are saying, well, do I want to be there and be subject to that, or do I want to restructure my affairs so it's more tax efficient? Well, these are some of the main reasons why people are looking at this. And, I'm just going to focus on the Caribbean at the moment. So, what it does, these are all citizenship programs. Okay, so it's a direct application for citizenship. You don't even have to, out of 4 out of the 5 countries, you don't even have to visit. So you can actually do this and go through the whole process without leaving, your living room, basically. You can stay in your home country and get it done, which is attractive to many people because of COVID and such like. So they've actually got more time, to be able to look at things like this and to get the necessary documentation. Each one of the 5 programs are very similar, but also have their unique differences, which we're going to break down as well. But these programs have been, well established and have been very, very popular for people who are looking for a quick and efficient solution. So we touched earlier about the 2 different options that typically show themselves in residence and citizenship by investment applications. So you either have a donation, which is where you're just writing a check to the government, you don't get any return, it goes into specific funds to benefit the country, and it's a much more transactional process. And for some people, that's what they want. They want a minimum of fuss, and they know that they can quickly and efficiently receive their second citizenship. So you'll see the countries are listed there on the left. The donation option, the second column, between 100 and 150,000 US for a single person. And keep in mind that these fees will increase proportionally depending on the size of your family. And so, some programs are priced more competitively for a family, others are more priced for a single applicant. So again, this is part of the process we would go through to analyze which one would be the best solution for you. Now you see on the third column, you've got the investment option in real estate. So this varies from 200 to 300,000. So again, it'll vary from program to program, but also, it's the quality of real estate. And that's one of the things that I'll be discussing as well when we look at what you should be looking for when you're looking to purchase property overseas. The processing times are similar. The countries that you can travel to visa-free, it's pretty similar. And you see it's only Antigua and Barbuda where you have to spend 5 days in the first 5 years as your obligation to visit the country and to swear your oath of allegiance. For the others, there's no obligation to do so. So let's have a look then if we break down some of the pros and cons between doing the donation option and the real estate. So on the donation side, it's, to use a British term, it's cheap and cheerful. You can get it single person's investment starting from 100,000 and a direct pathway to citizenship. Now, there's no return on this. It is literally cutting a check, thank you very much, and it's a transactional process. But on the real estate, and some people, especially business people, they don't like to necessarily not give money away, but because they're obviously receiving the citizenship, but they'd like to retain an asset and some return on that investment. So, certainly with the on the real estate side, when we look at some of the pros, you've got the opportunity to own property abroad. And there's also different structures, title deed real estate or purchasing a share. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Some of the difficult things is that these properties will have a minimum hold time. So it can be anything from 5 to 7 years. And what we've seen historically is that people who held a property, they bought it, and 5 years come up and they want to resell it, they may have some challenges because either there's new product on the market, so someone would rather buy something new than something that's 5 years old, and also if they're overseas and they're having to deal with that process, it's all the legalities and the headache that can go with it. But also it's actually managing it, because typically when they purchase, there'll be a management agreement in place for that initial 5 years, so it's as turnkey as possible. But once that 5 years is up, then you've either got to re-engage, with a property management company, or to figure it out yourself. So again, it could be a hassle for some people if they are overseas. We have to look at how often are you going to use it, because if we look at the Caribbean, it's definitely a tourist destination. It's very popular with with people from all over the world who come and want to enjoy island life, and so geography will play a part in this. We see a lot of people, let's say from New York or Canada, who are used to harsher winters, like we also have in Russia as well. They're saying, well, it's February, it's cold, I want to go sit in my villa, in the Caribbean. And so if you've got your place, you can use it as often or as little as you like. And so if it's only a 3 or a 4 hour flight, it's much more attractive to many people. And if they're not using it, obviously it can go into a rental pool, or if it's within a hotel, it can go into their reservation systems as well. Now, the return on investment, typically you're looking 3 to 4%, which isn't terrible, but it's not great if you're looking at it purely from an investment point of view. Obviously, the extra benefit is having the citizenship. And so that's where people have to weigh up which is going to be the right solution for me. Now, going at some of these pros and cons here, the exit strategy, I think, for many is key. And so it's saying, if I want to go through this process, how do I get out when my term is up? And that's one of the key things you have to look at when you're looking at the property. Because if you're working with a developer, some of them may offer some buybacks. They may have some different offerings in place. So that's definitely one of the things you need to look at. So for many people, participating today, they've maybe never been to the Caribbean. They've never bought a property overseas. So all this is very new. And so it's important that we look at some of these key considerations, and these considerations can go not just in the Caribbean, but they can apply globally. Okay, just a lot of good common sense things that we should focus on. So one is the exit strategy. I think that's an important one for you. Obviously, the real estate, you're acquiring an asset, so you're not just writing a check and moving on. Now, the returns I touched on, but what we're also going to expect this year is the returns are going to be low. The reason I say that is when COVID hit, all the hotels in the Caribbean essentially had to close, right? So, and the islands closed their borders. So the opportunity to generate revenue was lost. So they're all going to be operating at a loss, not just in the Caribbean, but globally. So things such of that nature are going to impact whatever potential return you could get. But an interesting note here is I mentioned all of these islands shut their borders. So that meant if you wanted to come in as a visitor, you're not getting in, okay? You're not going to be able to enter. However, if you were a citizen, then as a citizen of that country, they can give you access, so you can enter, right? So again, if you're coming from a country where you're saying, look, I'm just not happy, and if there was a second spike of COVID, and I say, look, I want to actually go and sit on the beach in my villa and be as isolated as I can from the larger populations or things of that nature, the only way you're going to be able to get in is if you're a citizen. Okay, so that's one thing that we've noticed for a lot of people who wanted to get outside of their home country. They were restricted because they didn't have status, whether that's residency with a residence card or citizenship. They're not going to be able to get in. So that's a consideration we're seeing from a lot of people now is how do I get there? Because as a consequence of COVID, and this workshop we're doing today on Zoom is a perfect example. People are working remotely. Kids are learning remotely, and so it's demonstrated that we don't need to be in the middle of a downtown core in a big high-rise building surrounded by multiples of people. People are able to work from their laptop, from their phone, and still be efficient. So with the communication networks and the technology that's on the islands, people are able to do so. So people are looking at this from a wholly different perspective, really as a consequence of what COVID has forced the world to do in terms of its business practices. So we decided, okay, here's where I want to go. Here's a product that I like or a development that I like. It's important to look now at the background of the developer. Okay, so how long have they been doing this? What's their track record? What's their exit strategy? And also, and more importantly, what's their equity? There were examples, going back several years now in the Caribbean where certain developments were being funded wholly 100% by citizenship, by investment. And so the developer didn't have any of their equity. They didn't have any skin in the game, and so their exposure was minimal. And they would have to wait till they had at least 50% of revenues in before they could even break ground. So unfortunately, there's stories of developments that weren't funded and never broke ground and are just sitting there, and people are upset. So the usual caveat emptor, buyer beware. Make sure that you do your homework on who you're actually investing with. to be able to come good on actually completing the development. Some places are already in the construction, others are existing. So it's a consideration to look at when you're choosing a developer. And there's, like most things, there's good and there's bad and there's indifferent. So it's finding that right fit for you. So, and when you're looking at it, we talked about the usage. Some of them will factor in, 2 weeks use a year, 5 weeks use a year. So again, if you think that you're actually going to want to use it, then that's a consideration you have to make or negotiate with the developer, saying, look, I don't mind putting it in the rental pool for 3 weeks, but I want to have 2 weeks every year in February. I know I'm coming down with my family and I'm going to enjoy the lifestyle that goes with it. So some of the developments now have structured their offering where it's essentially a share purchase. So as opposed to you buying physical property, so you can just go and buy a villa already built, ready to go, full title deed. But developers have responded to the market saying, well, look, some people are never going to use it. They want to invest into the resort or the development, so they're actually buying a share in the overall resort as opposed to an individual unit, and then they'll see the performance of that resort would contribute towards their returns on investment. So it's a slightly different model. Some people want that physical piece of real estate, and others are happy to go down the share purchase option. Now, it's also, depending on the program, some of the programs, like in Grenada, for example. Grenada is one of those unique programs that has a citizenship by investment program, but is also a treaty country with the United States as it relates to their E2 program. Now, the E2 is essentially an entrepreneur visa where you would invest into a business in the United States and you can get a non-immigrant visa, so a temporary visa. So unlike the EB5, it's not a green card. Okay, so you can come in, you can extend it and maintain status in the US, but you're only eligible if you're a citizen of a treaty country. So many people look at Grenada as an option, but then when they're making their application at a US consulate, the consular officer may be saying, well, what are your connections to Grenada? And in this case, what we recommend to people is saying, well, if you're planning to also apply for the E2, you're better to go the real estate route because you're going to establish a nexus, a connection to Grenada, as opposed to just doing the donation. So these types of details can be important if you're looking at a longer term strategy for a client who's considering access, let's say, into the United States as a byproduct of them getting their second citizenship in Grenada. Now, keep in mind, Grenada is the only one in the 5 Caribbean countries that has that dual benefit, if you like. And so, certainly if you are a citizen of a country that is not a treaty country with the US, this gives you an extra solution. And then the other thing I think you need to consider is if you're looking at some of these developments, some of them are still in construction. So we've identified who's the developer, what's their equity, what's the exit strategy, but where is it in terms of the construction? Has it even broken ground? Some of these places, as I mentioned, haven't gotten to that stage yet. And even those that are in construction, have experienced delays because of COVID. With the inability for people to travel, inability for workers to work, and inability for goods to be received. So there is always going to be knock-on effects. And I think when people are looking at the opportunity of purchasing, particular somewhere like the Caribbean, where they maybe haven't visited or done business before, these are some of the key elements I think people have to consider. So I did want to, on this session, break down how to qualify. We've spoken about, you can go donation or real estate, and I'm trying to respect the subject matter today is the tips and traps of real estate. So I wanted to go through some of my concerns there of what people would need to look at when you're considering real estate in the Caribbean. Please, you've got my contact details there. Please reach out if you have any questions. There's a variety of different developers on all the islands that I'm more than happy to introduce you to. As a firm, and also with my role with the Investment Migration Council, we conduct our own due diligence to make sure that the developers and real estate opportunities we put forward to you, that we have vetted and that they're following all the proper best practices that we would expect from a experienced and qualified developer. So that's my summary of the Caribbean. I know we've got quite a few questions here, so I'm going to close down my presentation.